어머니 모시라고 했어요. 어머니한테 뛰어들었어요. 어머니 돼서. 저기 어머니 돼서. 범인은 나.
This is the Chidjong family, shortly before their trial in 1994. The gang consisted of 7 members suspected of committing some of the most heinous crimes ever recorded in South Korea. Their arrest was made possible only due to the bravery of one of their victims, who managed to escape certain death and bring an end to their reign of terror. Kidnapping, assault, and murder. These were just a few of the horrifying crimes attributed to these barbarians. But even these pale in comparison to their most shocking and unthinkable atrocities. So, let's delve into the story of South Korea's very own Manson family, a cannibal clan also known as the Korean Gang, with the most deadly killer house. When police first looked at the frantic Lee Jong-soo as she recounted the final days of her life, their initial assumption was that she was under the influence of illegal drugs. However, as the girl described her abduction, abuse, and sheer torture, she mentioned 2 other victims. That's when the officers realized she was talking about 2 missing persons they had been searching for themselves. Her kidnapping and the ordeal she endured at the hands of the infamous Chidjong family remains one of the most shocking cases I have ever encountered.
네, 정말 지금 심정 어때? 자, 저 그렇게 잘 생각해요. 자, 스트 이렇게 줘야 돼.
알았어요.
지고.
나 이상한 생각해. 나 진짜 죽일 사람 따로 있었는데 엉뚱한 사람만 죽인 것 같아.
In the summer of 1993, around a poker table, Kim Ki-hwan met Moon Sang-rok and Kim Hyun-young. This was a meeting that would change their lives forever. As it turned out, all 3 shared one common trait, a deep hatred for the rich. That day, they decided to form a gang to fight against those they despised so much. Their doctrine was simple but clear. We hate the rich. A traitor to the group must be killed. Trust no women, not even your own mother.
어머니 모시라고 했어요. 어머니한테 뛰어들었어요. 어머니 돼서. 저기 어머니 돼서. 범인은 나이 중에서 나라니.
내 사이를 못 죽여서
Kim Ki-hwan became their leader. Although they later became known as the Chidjong family, the gang's original name was entirely different. In fact, the name Chidjong was coined by the police investigating their case at the time. Kim, however, preferred the name Mosgan, believing it to mean ambition in Greek. To grow their numbers, the gang needed more men. To find recruits, they frequented construction sites, where they actively sought out new members. This is how Kang Dong-woon, Baek Byung-ok, Kang Moon-sup, and John Boon-woon joined their ranks. Now that their group had grown to 7 members, they began crafting a plan for their revenge against the wealthy. But first, they needed a base for their criminal operations.
정말 죽일 사람 못 죽여서 한이면 더 많은 사람 못 죽였어.
이 집은 무슨 돈으로 지었어요? 사사하고 집진 거.
너가 얼마나 받았어요?
노가다 한 돈으로 집 졌단 말이에요?
The group decided to pool their finances to ensure they had enough resources to carry out their plans. With the collected funds, they purchased guns, knives, swords, and 2 vehicles. They also acquired a house, where they constructed several chambers in the basement and installed a terrifying incinerator. The gang devised a scheme to amass 1 billion won, roughly equivalent to just over $1 million at the time. Their plan involved kidnapping and extorting money from members of the upper class. The gang rigorously trained each other and soon felt ready to begin their criminal operations. All they needed now was their first victim. In July 1993, 20-year-old Miss Choi was walking under a railway bridge, completely unaware of the danger awaiting her. There, she encountered the Chidjong family and was abducted. They took her to a nearby hill, where every gang member subjected her to brutal and senseless abuse. But she wasn't taken purely for their twisted pleasure. Kim, the gang's leader, had more sinister plans for his terrified victim. Although Miss Choi came from a poor family, Kim saw her as a training opportunity for his gang to perfect the art of cold-blooded murder. According to later confessions from gang members, Kim used her as an example, showing the others how to strangle a person. He demonstrated step by step how to wrap his hands around the likely terrified Miss Choi's neck and squeeze the life out of her, providing a chilling lesson on how to end a human life. Though her body was discovered quickly, the police found no motives or clues, leaving her death a mystery for the time being. The gang's next victim, however, would hit much closer to home. Founding member John Boon-woon was entrusted with the role of the gang's treasurer. By August 1993, they had accumulated about 3 million won, and John saw an opportunity to exploit his position. He took the money and fled. Unfortunately for him, he only managed to reach a relative's house before the other members of the Chidjong family tracked him down. When they found him, there was only one thing on their minds: revenge. Following their doctrine that a traitor must be killed, they took John to a secluded location and brutally executed him by shooting. After several murders, the gang needed a systematic way to identify South Korea's wealthy elite. To achieve this, they required a list. They obtained one from a disgruntled employee of Hyundai's exclusive Seoul department store. The list contained the names and details of over 1,200 of Seoul's wealthiest car owners. Armed with this information, the gang could finally target individuals they knew were affluent. However, their criminal enterprise soon faced a major setback when they were caught off guard in the midst of their activities. Kim Ki-hwan was arrested after John Boon-woon's murder, but not for that crime. His arrest was related to an incident that occurred the night before Miss Choi's killing. Kim had assaulted his own niece, subjecting her to a horrific ordeal that left lasting physical and psychological scars. While the police were unaware of Kim's other actions, they still managed to imprison him, leaving the gang without its leader and founder. With the list of Hyundai luxury car owners in hand, the remaining members of the gang continued their pursuit of wealth. But things didn't unfold as they had hoped. One night, Lee Jong-soo was driving with her musician boyfriend when the Chidjong family spotted them. Seeing the couple's car, the gang decided they had found their next victims. The couple was boxed in by the gang's vehicles, leaving them stranded on the road. Moon Sang-rok dragged the boyfriend out of the car, savagely stabbed him, and then brutally beat him. Both victims were gagged and taken to the gang's incineration facility. But this was only the beginning of their nightmare. By the time the Chidjong family demanded ransom for their release, the couple had already spent an entire night in captivity. However, their methods of choosing victims were flawed. The car they targeted turned out to be an old, battered model. Realizing they had no chance of obtaining the ransom, the gang vented their frustrations on the victims. The gang members took turns raping Lee Jong-soo before turning their attention to her boyfriend. They forced Lee to not only watch but also participate in his murder. The terror, horror, and emotional torment she endured were unimaginable. The gang ordered Lee to place a plastic bag over her boyfriend's head and strangle him. When she refused, Moon Sang-rok grabbed her hands and forced her to hold the bag while her boyfriend took his final, desperate breaths. Before this, they made him drink a large quantity of alcohol, not only to ease his death, but also to stage the murder as an accident. The gang then placed the boyfriend in the driver's seat, drove the couple's car to a cliff, and pushed it over the edge. Not content with their depravity, the gang assaulted Lee again at the same site. When the police discovered the wreckage, they dismissed the incident as an accident due to the high levels of alcohol found. Despite everything, Kim Hyun-yong convinced the gang to spare Lee's life. What they failed to account for, however, was her determination to survive and her resilience to bring them to justice. Just a few days later, the Chidjong family identified their next target. They spotted a middle-aged wealthy couple driving a Hyundai. However, once again, they overestimated their victim's wealth and soon realized the couple wasn't as affluent as they had hoped. The pair, identified as Mr. Seo and Mrs. Park, didn't have the 100 million won the gang demanded for their release. Still, Mr. Seo promised he could gather the money if given enough time. Despite managing to collect only 80 million won, the gang accepted the sum and ordered Mr. Seo to retrieve it. He went to meet a friend under the pretense of needing money for an urgent medical operation. After receiving the funds, however, he calmly told his friend that he had been kidnapped. This desperate attempt to seek help proved futile. When Mr. Seo returned to the gang, they decided to break their promise to release the couple. Instead, they resolved to end their lives. The Chidjong family forced Lee Jong-soo to do their dirty work. They handed her a gun and ordered her to kill the couple. Moments later, Mr. Seo and Mrs. Park were dead. What the gang did to their bodies afterward defies comprehension and stands as one of the most horrific crimes South Korea has ever witnessed. When the Chidjong family hosted a barbecue outside their home, the local residents had no idea what was being cooked. In a grotesque act of cannibalism, the gang served their last victim as dinner, a horrifying act that shocked the entire nation.
나 인간이 아니니까. 혼자 먹었어요.
혼자 먹었어요? 아니 저 앉아도 될 거 아니야. 잘 먹었어요.
인간이 포기하려고. 야 바로 세워.
집안 아까 나왔어. 누구를 못 죽였어? 누구를? 죽이고 싶었는데.
Worse yet, the gang forced Lee Jong-soo to consume human flesh, and her torment was far from over. On September 16, 1994, while practicing the use of dynamite as part of their plan to break their leader out of prison, Kim Hyun-yong and Lee Jong-soo were injured. The gang members suffered burns during the training session. With no other choice, the Chidjong family had to take them to a hospital for treatment. They decided to bring Lee along, a decision that would become their biggest mistake. Kim Hyun-yong expressed trust in Lee, saying he liked her. He even allowed her to keep the gang's money and phones. While in the hospital room, Lee was called by a nurse to visit her friends. In that moment, despite living in constant fear and unsure if it was a test, Lee made the brave decision to escape. Her escape was anything but easy. When she fled into a nearby taxi, the driver's questioning made her suspicious, and she quickly abandoned the vehicle at the first opportunity. Part of her paranoia stemmed from what the Chidjong family had told her, that their gang had thousands of members and would find her wherever she went. Desperate for freedom, Lee ran into a nearby vineyard, rented a car, and waited there for 8 hours for it to arrive. After an excruciating 7-hour journey from the province where she had been held captive to Seoul, she found the nearest police station and revealed the harrowing ordeal she had endured at the hands of the Chidjong family. The police launched a swift operation to apprehend the criminals. Soon after, the entire gang was taken into custody. Their trial, held on November 1st, 1994, became a media sensation, sparking an unprecedented level of public attention and outrage.
지금 잘난 놈들이라는 사람들은 다 말씀하세요.
None of the 6 gang members who stood trial showed any signs of remorse for their heinous crimes. On the contrary, they seemed to revel in their actions, expressing regret only that they hadn't managed to kill enough wealthy people. Each of them was found guilty and sentenced to the harshest punishment the country allowed, death. On November 2nd, 1995, nearly a year after the trial concluded, all members of the Chidjong family were executed. But one victim remains alive, Lee Jong-soo, a woman who displayed extraordinary courage in the face of unspeakable atrocities. 3 decades have passed, and it's unknown how these horrific events have affected her life. Yet we can all sleep soundly knowing that these cold-blooded, cannibalistic killers will never have another chance to strike.